It's working. Is it because I muted? No. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's
So, hey, welcome everyone. Today is Tuesday, July 19th, 2022. This is the Cottonwood Heights City Council work session, and my name is Mayor Mike Wickers. So the first item on our agenda today is a review of our business meeting agenda. We have a busy night ahead of us. I've asked Council Member Bracken if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Thank you for doing that, Scott. The next item on our agenda tonight is our City Council committee reports. And so just a couple of reminders, we wanted to move that to the business meeting. And we want you to try, if possible, to stay at 3 minutes. If we take too much time, then it can, if everybody took 5, it turns into a half an hour instead of 15 minutes. So anyway, if we can try to stay at 3, that's great. And hoping that you'll spend time telling, the public what you all do. We know you do a ton for the city outside of just coming to city council. And so this is an opportunity that we're going to do the second business meeting of each month, where you'll have that 3 minutes. This is going to be a monthly occurrence, not a per meeting occurrence, but a second meeting each month occurrence where you'll get to tell us things that are going on, that you're working on, and that are important that you want the public to hear. So anyway, hopefully it'll be a good experience, and we'll kind of evaluate it as it goes. So the next item is our citizen comment period. And then we will have item 5.0 is a public hearing. And we will be having a hearing on 5.1, which is the proposed amended compensation schedule for the city's elected and statutory officers. So I have kind of made a preliminary decision that we're probably not going to vote on this tonight. What I would like to do is have the public hearing option, and we'll see who, if we get any comments at all, but I would like probably going forward, when we have public hearings, to probably not vote directly after on what we're talking about in the public hearing. The purpose is we need to hear public comments and take them into account. And if we just hear them and then vote, I don't think the public's thinking that maybe we're taking this serious enough, or that we're coming in with predisposed decisions. So we are going to, so tonight we're not going to have the vote on this. So we will have a hearing on it. And I'm probably going to keep the hearing open even until it, depending on if we don't have anybody come, maybe I won't do that. But if we do, I'll probably keep it open till our next meeting on August 2nd. And so that means that in our agenda, 6.1 legislative item consideration of ordinance 386, which is approving this compensation, we will not vote on that tonight. So,
and we did that always for many years. We did get to the point where we weren't getting any comments, or there wasn't any dissuasion, then we would go ahead and do it in the same meeting. So yeah. I mean, but that perception can be there.
Okay. Yep. Thanks, Scott. Anyway, so then the next item on our agenda is consideration of resolution 2022-38, amending the designated area closed to discharge of fireworks for 2022. I don't see Riley here, but
so he got a flat tire. He texted me a few minutes ago. So he will be here. He'll actually be here shortly.
Should we come back to that, or do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I can talk about it.
Okay.
And it's explained in the memo where we've had some individuals contact us, and Councilmember Burrell was a part of one of the conversations. They had contacted her and then looped me in, where there are some areas that we reevaluated based on the state standards related to distance requirements for fireworks. And so based on that, we had the fire marshal look at it and provide an evaluation, and they're recommending a modification to our map. And so Riley will be here to talk about it tonight in the meeting, but we're proposing and recommending that we modify the map and get that in place for the 24th weekend, which is coming up. So we're recommending approval of the modification, which is outlined in the resolution.
Okay. Great. Any questions, comments on that?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it and those changes were all in District 4.
Yes,
And it looks like it's basically District 4.
yes. That's correct.
Something we probably should consider and maybe coordinate with other cities next year. Last year we did, we were consistent with Mill Creek, Murray and Sandy, and just doing everything east of 13th East. I know this is a number, but it's the same thing this year. If they're going to be doing that type of a thing, that again, next year, we probably should coordinate with them. Just that makes it a little easier for the general public if we're still in the dry situation and stuff like that. We should consider possibly, again, just doing that from the outset.
Did Sandy, did they do it east of 13?
At least their signs have always had out there look the same, the same as it's been. And I know Holiday effectively did that, even though they don't go west of 13th. So it was basically all Holiday, and that's where Mill Creek set theirs. I don't know about Draper.
Yeah. I've seen that sign as well in Sandy, so I think that's actually a really good comment, Scott. So we'll take that under advisement and as we look at that next year.
Yeah, last year we did that more because of and Riley, you can address this. There was more direction from the state and the governor on the conditions last year compared to this year, which it's not the same this year as it was. I know they're taking that stance and we could definitely look at that as well. It would basically mean that most of our city, with the exception of some very, very small pockets of our city, it would be the whole city we would not allow fireworks, which that's the council's prerogative on that. But it's basically just a small area on the west side, of the city that wouldn't allow for that. So we can talk about it next year, but that's the big reason why it was pushed last year, is there was a lot more support from the governor and the conditions last year compared to this year, which we haven't received, and you can address that.
Valley-wide, the fire chiefs all got together and agreed that that was something they wanted to do valley-wide. And so there's a lot of backing and collaboration behind it. This year, when we reached out to a lot of our neighboring cities, they were all over the place with how they're gonna do restrictions because of problems that they expected last year. I mean, but environmentally, we're definitely in a hot and dry place we are this year, but there's way less emphasis this year on restrictions and more on safe use. And so Holiday, Mill Creek, and then Sandy and Draper, they've all just decided that they're just drawing a line at 14th East or 9th East or wherever. And that's just the decision they made, whether it falls into statute or not. And so as a council, you kind of have the discretion to do that. You just face whatever pushback comes. And we met a lot of firework industry specialists last year afterwards, and they're pretty upset with us that we pushed it, but we felt like it's the right thing given the conditions. And we're always open to more restrictions or whatever you want to do, and we'll always recommend them. But sometimes it could be a little over the top. And that, what I mean by that's the statute as written doesn't necessarily allow for that. But if there's an environmental condition where they're pushing it statewide or it's been shared, then we can act on that. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Keep going. I appreciate that. Any other questions, comments about that item?
I get calls occasionally. I know aerials are the ones that probably are the most fearful. There's some people in their backyards wonder if they do the low ones type thing. Is it still kind of no open flame at all? Is that, I know there's a spectrum of use, and I think people want to comply, but they're not exactly sure if a smoke bomb or something in their backyard's going to get a call.
Once a restriction set, that's all fireworks. And so, because the reason for that's impossible to enforce it otherwise. And it just makes it really challenging on that end, especially for law enforcement, because you buy a box of fireworks, maybe like one off that has an aerial in it or whatever. It starts creating confusion for everybody. And we actually took that to the state to see if they'd be willing to adjust the legislation for that, aerial ban versus normal fireworks, and that not a chance.
No chance.
That was frustrating for us.
So to this point, have we had any fireworks related issues in Cottonwood Heights?
Not that I'm aware of that have been problematic, and to be honest, even valley-wide, other than a few that were shared, I know they showed some of the board meeting this morning. I know the west side of the valley's had a few, it's, 4th of July is relatively uneventful. And we are a little worried about now, obviously, 'cause it's been so hot and dry, we've been getting some rain, but anytime it gets hot and dry and windy, it's just, doesn't matter if it's July, August, May, it's always problematic.
Yeah.
This just adds to it, so.
Yeah.
But, nothing significant.
Yeah, I have one other. thing.
Yeah,
And Riley, your Assistant Chief Pilgrim, will talk about this. We put together the map with the additional areas. There was a, for lack of a better term, donut hole created. That we want to close that portion of it as well and just include that. And so we'll share that in the business meeting and make sure the council's comfortable with that at this point. Is that okay, Riley?
Correct, yeah, and we'll be ready for that.
I'm also going to share in the business meeting that our gratitude to UFA. So we had an issue last night.
Yeah,
And so I'm gonna talk about that as we get going tonight. So thank you and of course appreciate you, everything you do. Okay, next item this evening that we will consider is a resolution 2022-39, which is accepting requests for indemnification. Shane, do you want to give us a little bit of background on that, if you could?
Sure. As we've discussed before, the Governmental Immunity Act of Utah provides that if a public employee is sued as an individual in a lawsuit, why then that individual has the right to request that the governmental entity employer agree to defend and indemnify the employee in the lawsuit. And so if such a request is made, by then the governmental entity, assuming it isn't convinced based on competent evidence at the time that the action was clearly outside the scope and course of the employee's job
Can I
duties,
plug that in?
is obligated to pick up to agree to accept the defense and indemnity. So that is what's happening via this resolution. The city, the police department and 5 city employees were sued in connection with an incident that occurred just over a year ago. And all of the individuals have requested defense and indemnity from the city, and a written request is required by the statute. And so this issue is now before the council for approval, and my view is that the council needs to approve this resolution.
Okay. Any questions or comments from council on this? Okay,
Well, this is the same. This is a shall approve. And there, we always have the caveat in there that if it comes outside of their job, then we can remove that.
I think there's a reservation of rights clause.
Right.
right,
There is a
that,
reservation of rights clause.
Yeah, that we can take back the indemnification. Okay. Great. And then the last legislative item for this evening is consideration of resolution 2022-40, which is approving an agreement with CERC Inc., Construction Manager, General Contract Services. I think we're gonna have Matt and Shane kind of give us some background.
Yeah, I'll hit real briefly what this is, and Shane can tell you the follow-up to what's happened so far.
Thanks, man.
I'll do the easy part. Well, we went out for a CMGC, Construction Manager, General Contractor for the Public Works Facility. We sent out an RFP. We had 3 companies submit an RFP, a request for proposal, to the city. As a city, we had a committee of 5 employees, I believe, plus outside. We reviewed all 3 proposals. And in that review, based on criteria that was there, we felt like CERC, SIRQ, was the best option for the city of those that were proposing. And at that time, we went into negotiations for contract. And there you go.
So has CERC done any work for the city? in the
No,
past?
they have not.
They
No,
have not.
no.
Okay.
This building was done with CMGC. Leighton Construction did this one.
Okay.
But Leighton did not put in on the Public Works building.
Okay.
So yeah, we have not worked with CERC in the past, nor have we worked with any of the other 2 that put in as well.
Okay.
Are they local then here?
They're local Utah, yes. I mean, some are, I can't recall, but Cirque, yeah, they're here in Salt Lake County.
So when any entity is going to construct any building of any magnitude, the standard in the construction industry is to use a suite of documents that are prepared and owned as proprietary assets by the American Institute of Architects. In other words, these are called AIA documents. And so here are the documents that we're using in this transaction. This first one is an AIA document A133, standard form of agreement between owner and construction manager as contractor, where the basis of payment is the cost of work plus a fee with a guaranteed maximum price. And then the other document we're using is the AIA document A201. These are general conditions of the contract for construction, which are incorporated by reference in various other types of base AIA documents. So together, these will be the documents that are being used. Unfortunately, for me and other lawyers that have to deal with these, it isn't just a matter of printing these off and filling in a few blanks, because they're very long, involved, complicated documents. They are drafted by the Architects Association, but in actuality, they're used in projects that involve not only architects, but also owners and contractors. And so the architect's interests are obviously covered by these documents, but there wasn't really anybody at the table protecting or watching out for the interests of the owners or necessarily the contractors. So depending on who the lawyer is representing in such a project, there are changes that would need to try to be negotiated. And so when this project came in, I thought, gee, I was hoping to be able to retire before I had to do one of these again, but I wasn't so lucky. So we worked and generated markups of these documents. The other problem is that every document is updated every 10 years. And so when I did the City Hall project, I was using the AIA document A133 SP 2009 and the A201 2007, but now they have been updated because we're past the 10-year mark on each of those prior versions. So I wasn't able to just use what we had done before. I had to go in and dig around and figure out the differences between the two editions and make changes accordingly. So we finally got our drafts done on June 28th, submitted them to the contractor. And so the contractor chewed on them for a while. And last Friday, the contractor's project manager came and met with me. We sat before my computer for 2 or 2.5 hours and went through every practically every change that I was proposing, and explanations were given and responses were given. And so we just worked through things. We had Matt on the phone with us for about 2 of those hours so that he could weigh in on any questions that we had. Ultimately, from my perspective, there were very few substantive changes to the versions that I sent out to you last Thursday or whenever I circulated my meeting packet materials. The only ones that I would consider to be material changes were changes in the insurance limits. And what I typically do on insurance limits is kind of go for the sky and then see if we have to negotiate back again, bearing in mind that in most instances, the city's risk is going to be determined by whatever the damages cap is at that point in time under the Governmental Immunity Act in Utah. In this case, it's about $2.5 million, a little bit more. So anyway, we went through and negotiated some of those insurance limits. On some I held firm, on some I gave a bit. Ultimately, I believe the city is more than adequately covered on insurance coverage. So anyway, that is my report on these things, and My request is let's not build another building for another 4 or 5 years until I'm retired.
So Shane, I didn't hear you very well. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, whatever you like, Mayor.
Thank you. So that is what we'll be voting on tonight. So the last item for this evening is just the approval of the consent calendar, which is the meeting minutes for July 5th. Okay. So we have invited I think it's Mr. Joseph Silverswag. Did I say that right?
Close enough.
It's close enough.
Yeah.
Joseph is the Comcast, he works for Comcast and is the government affairs manager. And he's gonna present to us. Let's invite him up to the table if we can.
Yeah, we're just gonna get a PowerPoint pulled up here, hopefully, or I can just, wait a minute. Let's give them a couple minutes to get it up, there's some useful maps and other information. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Good. How do you pronounce it correctly?
Silverswag,
Silverswag.
but I always say the key is confidence, because nobody else knows how to say it either, so if you sound like you know it, everybody else will believe you, and I will tell.
Silverswag, is that Swiss or Swedish?
The language is German, it's a Jewish name from Poland.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you.
Is that the first?
No, that is the.
There we go.
second. There we go. All right. Hi, everybody. As introduced, my name is Joe Silverswag. I work for Comcast. My job is government affairs manager, and it means that I handle relationships with local governments only. So we have somebody who does sort of state legislative stuff. What I do is I handle relationships with cities and relationships with counties all across the state of Utah and a little bit up into Idaho. And I just wanted to come here and talk to you about Comcast Network in your community, some of the work that we're doing both to support performance for your residents and also to support your community and a lot of the other stuff that we're doing. So if you want, I can just click if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And that way we're not back and forth. So this is just a little bit about Comcast. I'm sure you've heard of us. We're a global media entertainment company. Our goal is to provide sort of 21st century entertainment to communities. And we're also building the networks on which all of that information and entertainment rides, but we really see ourselves as a full top to bottom experience company for our residents. And that's really something I think that sets us apart from a lot of the competitors that you guys are talking to. We don't just bring a pipe of internet to the door. We also bring a whole suite of services that go with that. And that's what we've chosen to invest a lot of our resources in. And that's what makes us different and helps us to succeed in terms of, the business environment and being successful. The first thing I want to talk about, I think the most important thing for this group is just how connecting Cottonwood Heights is. So you got a little bit better resolution on this one. These blue lines here, these are our main fiber trunks. These are underground. There's all fiber infrastructure running throughout the city. And these pink lines here, those are aerial connections. So some of those are going to be fiber, some of those are going to be coax, but they're hanging on poles. And then these little red lines are connections to our potential. So you can see we are almost entirely built out in your community. There really isn't anywhere large that can't get access. And every single one of these rooftops, every single one of these individuals will access the best possible service. So that means you can get that gig download speed, you can get the full suite of Xfinity services, the Xfinity home, Xfinity security, your Xfinity cable, all of those kinds of things all come with that. Now in almost all of them,
Shut up. Can we blow that? Is it possible to blow that map up so I can see that we have a big hole right where I live?
Well, that's the next,
I can just point,
that's the next map.
that's kind of where I was
Okay.
looking there.
Yeah.
There's a couple spots.
There's a couple of spots.
And I'm not worried just about my neighborhood, but
No, absolutely. So what we did, I think everything changed for a lot of people in the pandemic way, right? We recognized suddenly that we had gone from this nice to have, sort of luxury product, just absolutely essential for people just to live their day-to-day lives. And I think that has been changing over the last couple of decades. And the pandemic was a wake-up call for communities and companies alike for us to say, we really have a new kind of responsibility. So in this last year, we completed a really thorough serviceability analysis, and you can see some of those holes that you're talking about here. We identified 9 key gaps in coverage. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I think you were circling some of those when you were there.
There's one down here.
If we're missing other ones,
we're not even labeled as being missed.
let me know. And we can get those added.
Yeah, if you went down here a little bit, but didn't go quite all the way.
Okay.
I would love to see this one in my area.
Right.
I was not aware of this one.
Huh.
That's sure not that pretty big one at the end.
That must be that Giverny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
No.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it is. It's
Yeah,
Giverny.
you're right. It might be.
I'll tell you what usually is the case in areas like that is it usually was owned by an HOA. The HOA had an exclusive agreement with a different provider, didn't let us build to that area when they constructed. And then the exclusive agreement elapses and we don't have the ability to access as affordably as before because all the roads and all the other.
Well, I can tell you Giverny is brand new and it does not have an HOA yet. It
Okay.
is still under construction.
Okay.
Hmm.
We found 442 passings to add. So that should get us to almost complete coverage. Absolutely encourage you to let me know what areas we may have missed on this. We can do more. This has already been submitted for approval as of last week to build out those 442. That's a $1.25 million investment in the community. We're not asking for any money from the city. We're not asking for any money from the state. There's nothing you have to sign or do. We're all ready to work on this. It'll probably be done depending on winter weather, but let's say definitely done by summer. Sometimes you guys like to handle your.
Let me ask, what percentage of the households in Cottonwood Heights subscribe to Comcast?
So our what we call penetration rate is a little bit over 60%. That's not every house, that's the houses that we pass, about 60 to 65% of.
What do you mean that you
sign
pass?
up with us. So that's.
So that,
So not counting these areas, right?
Okay.
The industry standard is to count just the homes that we pass, not every. So about 60 to 65%. And then, you have a number of other providers in this community that pick up that other 40 to 35%. A lot of folks who choose to have mobile internet or if it's wireless. CenturyLink is all pretty ubiquitous. Picks up. But we're going to be 100% built out, or really close to 100% built out.
Joseph, out of that percentage, how many are cable versus fiber
So.
right now?
So the way that it works is we build our network out of fiber. So the core infrastructure that we build, we have about 800,000 miles of fiber infrastructure in the United States and then another about 400,000 counting Europe. And we use that fiber infrastructure as the backbone for our network. That goes to the node. In the last few hundred feet to quarter mile connection is an insulated glass. So it's not a fiber connection to your floor. The reason we do that is that's a lot cheaper. It costs a few $100s a foot to install fiber. It costs a few dollars a foot to install coax cable.
What's the
Also-
speed? What's the speed on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, the best speed that we offer on that kind of connection is our gig speed. So I think it's over 1,000 download speed, and then the upload speed is fairly modest, is in the 20 to 50 range, depending on where you live.
That's on cable, not
Yeah,
fiber.
it's on our coax cable. But I want to stress that we recognize that there's a lot of demand for speed in the marketplace, and that there is just an increasing focus, not just on speed, but also on improving upload speed. And we've been able, on our current coax connection, with our current modems, with current internet technology, current software, in lab settings, we've been able to get 3 gigabyte symmetrical speeds. And while we don't anticipate doing that tomorrow, we do anticipate that over the next 5 to 10 years, you're gonna see a rapid increase in upload speeds that we offer to our customers. And we're hoping to get to somewhere like 25 to 50% of your download. So rather than being 1,000 down and 20 up, we're hoping that our customers are gonna be 1,000 down and 200. We're really working to improve that and anticipate making a huge amount of progress.
So how are you gonna do that? Is that change in router modem or what is it?
It's on current technology. It's just a question of how we allocate the network. We need to, continue to build capacity, and then we need to make some changes to our software. But all of that stuff is going to happen on the back end, and we're going to be able to provide those kinds of resources to our current customers without asking them to change anything or do it. Not going to have to go through and install new infrastructure. It's all in place. It's just a question of getting the necessary software. It's a big project, expensive project. It'll take us years to get done, but
But back when the city incorporated Comcast top speed was probably 25, 30.
we'll better than that now.
Well, and they haven't torn up all the roads and replaced all the coax that they have all over the place. There's been technology improvements, software improvements, some hardware, things like that they've been able to do. So you'd had a 6G symmetrical. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, so that's our, that's a later bullet
Okay.
point. That's our Gigabit Pro fiber. We can actually connect residential customers to a fiber connection. There's I think it's a $300 connection fee. The cost for that service is high. It's $300 to $500 a month. But what we figure is, let's let the customers who really need that elite level connection or folks for uploading things like that. Let them pay for the connection they need and continue to invest resources. Regular user experience for most folks who are downloading a lot of data to watch Netflix and uploading just a little bit here and there for cloud needs, and then your occasional, for example, uploading a digital video file.
What percentage of your customers need that high level of upload speed?
We call them power users, and it is less than 1/10 of 1% of our customers.
Less than 1/10 of 1%?
And that's why we built the network. Maybe the investments that we made.
That's what you're talking, the multi-100 bit uploads.
Yeah, it's just not something that most folks.
The 25 to 30 megabit that you're currently doing, if you're syncing a cloud or something like that, that's typically going to be 30.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I have at my house. I have Comcast internet at my house. I get about a 600 to 700 download speed, which I love. I can watch videos and do all the things I want to do. I can watch that kind of video while my kids are playing, on YouTube, do all that stuff. I can also have a Zoom call at the same time all of that is going on with my current system, and I don't see any problems. Now, some people do. A lot of times that's sort of after we get to the wall, so it might be a modem issue, or you might have put your router in your basement next to your water heater or other problems like that, but we can get a truck to those houses installed. But that's what the product is kind of at the wall.
So if you were going to, so you offer the fiber to the home. Is that, how do you get it there? Do you micro trench, or how do you get it there?
So we build it the same way we do everything else. We use, that's what actually this slide's about. We use almost exclusively boring to get everywhere. And when we do our drop berries, some of our competitors will do their drop berries with a shovel. We do our drop berries with a smaller boring machine. It takes a little bit longer, so sometimes the customer has to wait a couple of weeks for our boring machine to get out of their yard. But we find that getting down 18 to 24 inches under the surface, reducing line cuts, improves performance over the long term, especially up here in secure environments. When you're doing micro trenching, you cut a little narrow slice and you drop a micro conduit in there. So the conduit is narrower and there's just a little bit of air around it. And then that road expands in the summer or fills with water. That over time really does degrade the quality of it. And it's placed more often, and you'll start to see Start to see performance problems. So why is my internet not as fast? I think it is. Yeah. Why?
And so if an individual orders this fiber to the home, what kind of expense do they incur?
I don't really, it's somewhere between $300 and $500 to get set up. And then it's pretty expensive each month. I think it's about $350.
No, a general person just with one
That's-
gig.
Yes,
Is that-
the general.
So that would be for a 6 gig symmetrical connection. That's what's called our gigabit pro. That's the.
That would be for a home business that's getting a
So
lot.
what I'm trying to reach out, I'm trying to compare apples to apples.
Yeah, that's what I
Because as you
meant.
can imagine, we've heard from Google,
Sure.
and I'm trying to understand in my layman's ability here to the how what you could provide that would be similar to the amount of upload capability that Google wants to put a node into every single house in Cottonwood Heights. So, you know, I don't know, I'm not asking you to be an expert on your competitors, although you may be, but I'm trying to, so I don't think that this is what Google is planning or would offer if they trenched them. So can you bring it to a level that is comparable to what we're looking at as we compare competitors? Do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, I would say our comparable product, sort of the product that we think about when we're thinking about is our gig speed. So that is 1,000 download speed. It's a much lower upload speed, about 50. And it comes with unlimited data. It comes with a wireless gateway, and all of the sort of services that come packaged with that, right? So all of that ease of use stuff. I like to give the example of I can watch a video on my TV and then I get tired and I get to bed and I open up my laptop and I can start the same movie from the same place. And then when I'm on the train on work the next day, I can pull out my Xfinity mobile phone and I can watch the same movie from the same place where I paused it without having to do any logins or any nonsense. It all just works. It's all just seamless. And we feel that has to work. And I think the market has borne it out in our business. Customers for those kinds of things to speed. That will tell you they want speed because faster internet is such an easy thing to say. It's such an easy thing to wrap your hands around. That sort of thing. So we see these kinds of survey results. Have you folks done a survey in Cottonwood Heights? We see pretty high numbers for that. But what we found in practice, those networks get built. Maybe 10 to 15% of people will try that out and we'll see our penetration number drop from 60 into the high 50s. And then it just comes right back up again after a few months and people realize, oh, the performance is pretty much the same. It was actually all of this other stuff that I thought was important. I didn't even realize I was getting.
So does your gig package require then a node to the home?
No.
No, and
Yeah.
and so that the cost of that is, what is that roughly a month?
Right now, for new customers, I think that is at. Oh, yeah, that's.
For internet only.
So is the,
Yeah, I was thinking been about 70, maybe.
You know, and we feel that competitive pressure and we certainly match those prices. Variation.
Occasionally, that's what I meant to ask is the Joe, person getting 1 gig or whatever, so about 70. My question is, I see things on social media say, hey, I'm down, we're down our area. Is that a lot of those aerials or is it a combination? A series of events that makes an area go out?
There are so many reasons that can have an outage, from a hardware problem at the code, from a hardware problem at the head end, which is kind of the internet hub that's close to your to any kind of damage to the lines, or software or hardware issues having to do with the router or other things that would direct your house. I had to have somebody out to my house the other day. There was an amplifier that they had strung to help improve the strength of my signal. It turned out that needed to be replaced. So there's all sorts of different ways that there can be issues. Like we had, last year we had somebody get mad at a low hanging line in their backyard and they cut it with a chainsaw and that knocked about 200,000 customers out for about 8 hours.
That was a backhoe. That was a backhoe and digging.
No, that would be nice. No, he did it on purpose. It was malice of forethought there.
So is your fiber basically the same technology that Google, Utopia, these others are using?
Yeah, the infrastructure in the ground is very, very similar. It is glass or fiber that carries virtually unlimited amount of data. The difference in decision making that we make, that last little bit of connection, we use coax because it's cheaper, easier to maintain. We can guarantee uptime's better with it. And that lets us invest those resources in a lot of other.
And they were already in 98% of the houses anyway.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Joseph, you do not go into the roads or you do go into the roads?
Borough.
We do go into the roads. We use what's called bore and pothole, right? So we have it's a machine that drives this orange stuff here in the picture is called conduit. It drives that through the soil under the road, and then we pothole as we go. So we'll cut a few smallish holes
Access canal.
just to make sure that we're in line, that we're not hitting the power line, the water line, those kinds of things.
I'm familiar with that. I'm talking about, like, for instance, Google wants to micro trench into our roads.
No, we don't do.
And so you would be to the side of the roads?
Yes, and we would run that down usually under your parking strips. But it's wherever the utilities is right away. So in the area. And then the other thing. Guys are doing your roads. Usually all this infrastructure is in place. If you're concerned about it, Tim and I can sit down and make sure that it's exactly the way it should. But when you open that up to put in your new power, your new sewer, your new water lines, we send a crew out there and roll. Just to see.
So, sorry, we've interrupted you. Let's
No,
let
I'm
you
loving
get
it.
through
This is so
the,
engaged. And
the,
I actually, I really
presentation.
appreciate all the
Yeah.
work.
yeah, you can keep going.
I want to talk a little bit, I feel like we've answered a lot of these. I'm going to kind of zip through these, but a little bit about technology capability. This is one thing I wanted to get on. Is Comcast Business is one of our best products, one of our growth products. These are almost all fiber connections. So we provide 100 gig circuit. Provide 100 gig circuit to Facebook and Center. I say 100 gig, that's a symmetrical 100 gig both ways fiber connection that goes directly to businesses. And I work closely with Economic Development Corporation of Utah. And when somebody new is coming to town, they don't call up EDC and say, "Here's Utopia, where's the fiber?" They always want to know, where can Comcast deliver? Because we really have best in class business products. And it's what drives, I think, more than anything else. Want to make sure everybody knows what we sell to the businesses includes direct fiber connections. They do sometimes have to pay for those, but that's part of doing business and kind of price. This is our residential services. As I mentioned, it's all about it and end-to-end seamless user entertainment experience. Top-end technology, everything always on, really easy to fix, improvements in customer service, all those. You were asking about investment in our network. We invested in 2021, $4.2 billion because we saw the same increase in need and capacity. We invested a great deal in making that happen. Even though we're seeing people start to return to the office and change their work patterns, the demand hasn't gone down. People are still using it as they always have. Although I do like to note here the asymmetric way that people are using the internet. So we saw download traffic increase more than twice as much as upload traffic in 2021. And overall, we see 13 times more download than upload. So if you think about it like a freeway, right? And you've got 14 lanes of traffic to work with, and you've got 7 lanes going one way and 7 lanes going the other way, you've got a symmetrical network. You're going to have one way going that's always empty and one way that's always full. So we designed our network to support that reality about the way that the market actually uses. See tons of entertainment, video streaming, video games, more than 80%. And we are really focused on these 10G connections, getting those 10 gig circuits over our current architecture. Our infrastructure. That's that's something that we want.
You have that running anywhere, you're just testing.
We're testing it and we can do amazing things in lab settings, but we're just not ready to roll that out with confidence. This is something I think really sets us apart from our competitors, community impact. Internet Essentials is our low-cost, high-speed internet program. So anybody who gets federal assistance is eligible for Internet Essentials. It's $10 a month, 50/5. Comes with a computer, comes with access to Xfinity Wi-Fi hotspots, comes with a wireless router. They don't need to buy anything. They don't need to do anything. It all just works. Digital literacy access. It's also a participant in the ACP. That's the Affordable Connectivity Program. I hope you guys are hearing about this a lot. This is a great new federal program, came out of all of the COVID relief stuff, but has become now a permanent part of the federal budget. It's an ongoing budget. And it is $30 a month for broadband connections for people it's up to 200% of poverty. So that's a lot of regular folks. I think a family of 5, that's about $70,000 income. So there's a lot of folks in your community benefit. From the government to help them pay for that. And we've designed this program to fit that. So we've got Internet Essentials Plus, which is twice as fast as our regular Internet Essentials. Happens to cost $29.95 a month. So it all fits in right under that ACP for $1. We've also got a bundled mobile plan. So one individual can have all of their access to the internet for $25 out of that. It really isn't anything.
These two programs were very critical during COVID. Comcast came in and actually made it possible for so many of our students, especially on the west side, to be able to have access for internet hotspots. We needed this opportunity with the prices, and they did it in a very short period of time. And they were very easy to work with to be able to get those projects put in and programs put in. And they've continued those programs, but because the need has not disappeared, it's still there. So they're very connected to our communities. We're doing this type of work to make sure access is available for any and every citizen.
Yeah, we've signed up 8 million people in the United States in the last 10 years to Internet Essentials. We are looking to sign up a lot more. In fact, we just announced Project Up to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. That's a $1 billion with a B commitment to sign up another 50 million people to affordable high-speed internet. We're working really hard on it. It's a big part of what I do every day. It's part of why I like working for Comcast. It's all our digital equity work that I get to do, and I have ways that I get to help people with those dollars. Rich zones are just a small part of that. These are free high-speed wireless connections at community centers. We've got 35 in Utah, 1,000 across the United States. A couple that are close to Cottonwood Heights, English Skills Learning Center, and Sharon Garden. In the low west and Midwest side. The thing I'm really proud of is our commitment to accessibility. If sound works, we'll listen to it. So Jimmy is a gentleman with extremely limited mobility. And he is one of the early adopters of our eye tracking program. So this is, you set up an iPad, in this case on Jimmy's wheelchair, and he's able to use his eye movements to direct the Xfinity remote and able to kind of watch TV on his own, do what he wants to do. That's just a small part of our commitment to accessibility. We really feel that the network is good as those that behind, right? And so we want to make sure that it serves everybody. We've got 2.7 million set-top boxes in the United States, or at least one. We know that there's still a lot of disabled Americans who don't have access to broadband. That's something that with Internet Essentials can through a lot of other ways. One of my favorite accessibility stories, though, is the voice remote. Everybody loves the voice remote. It's now an industry standard. Any kind of that you get is and that was actually out of our accessibility lab, our accessibility disability services R&D said, what if we had a voice remote for people who can't touch the button, see the buttons? Wouldn't that be great? It turns out if it's easier for somebody, it's easier for everybody. We find that works again and again and again. It's a lot of value. That's what I have for you today. I, again, really appreciate the engagement and all the questions as we went. I think this is a great audience. Sometimes eyes are kind of glazing over as we go through these. So thank you very much for thinking as I talked. Big takeaways, best in class business and residential entertainment projects, where customers need it now and not sort of an imaginary customer. Committed to a $1.25 million investment in Cottonwood Heights to complete building out your community, make sure that everybody is connected, and unparalleled commitment to visual equity, visual access to literacy. That's what I wanted to talk to you about today. If you have any additional questions, certainly happy to answer them now. I believe folks have my contact information. Certainly don't hesitate to reach out. And also in the gallery there, if you guys have any questions, I don't mind talking to the public. In fact, I enjoy it. So happy to answer that. Or even if you're just like, your speed's bad, or we dug up your lawn and we didn't fix it right, I can do something about that too.
So we do need to move on, but I do have two quick questions. If I could, and then, but I saw a slide that said you don't slow down speeds. Did that change? Because as I've complained at times, I know that I've been told by employees that, yeah, during our busy times, we slow down so that we can get internet to everybody. Is that changed, or is that the case?
We don't buffer speeds. We guarantee our actual contracted speed at the wall to our customers at all times.
Has that changed?
I think it has changed, and I think sometimes there are features of the way the network works that can cause those kinds of challenges. But what we do is we design the network so that it's about 18 months ahead of capacity, right? So we imagine where are we going to be in 18 months based on the current rate, and we build those that additional capacity as we go. So on our nodes, which is where that kind of goes to the consumer, when our nodes get to 75%, that's when we kick in the process, and we actually add more capacity to that part of the network before it fills up. So we're really confident that you're not going to see problems.
Okay, last question, maybe, sorry, it's anecdotal because I do it, and I'm a customer. But so I have the gig service, but and I know that's the speed. So, but I'm charged $10 to $40 extra every month for going over. So I imagine, so I was thinking that, I thought I heard you say the data is unlimited. So where would those charges come from?
So our existing customers may not be on those unlimited plans. We have just rolled those into place in the last year or so. I encourage you to, actually, I wouldn't encourage you to call customer service. Send me an email. I'll get you escalated and we'll get you fixed over up.
Great. Well, Joseph, thank you.
I just wanted to raise
Yes.
yours. So the network, the way you have it built is not pooled or shared, is it direct connection for each subscriber, or you just made the pool a lot bigger, so there's no
We
parent problem.
yes, we have a pool, right? The fiber goes to the node, and the node is the pool.
Okay.
But we make that pool more than big enough to fit all of our customers, and when the pool starts to fill up, we put in another pool right next to it.
Well, Joseph, thank you. We really appreciate it. I think it's been really informative, and I appreciate your time, and we thank you for doing things for the community and for, we appreciate it.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Happy to answer. Like I said, for future questions, just reach out. Love to talk. Happy to come back some other time if you have more questions.
Of course.
You happen to have my role.
Well, thank you. So we are going to move on. The first item under our staff reports is the report on our Butlerville Day festivities. So we're going to have our culture manager, Ann Etchell, come up and give us this report.
Good evening. We're only a week away from the big event, so I'm excited and tired and almost ready to go. Almost, the little things that we have to do at the end. Just give you a little bit of a rundown where I'm at with Butlerville Days. So just so you're all aware that the carnival will start setting up next Tuesday morning. And then we open Thursday at 4 p.m. Other field items, so I'll pretty much just be living at the park next week. Other field items arrive on Wednesday, which is tent restrooms, fencing and all that. On Thursday, we will have 5 food trucks. More of a soft opening. We're trying the carnival this year and a few food trucks, and then painting in the park on that day. But we have 5 food trucks coming in on Thursday with the carnival and then the painting in the park. On Friday and Saturday, we'll have a total of 18 food trucks in the event, all different kinds. And of course, there'll still be food with the carnival. So if they're bringing 4 or 5 food vendors with them. Also with Thursday is the historic walk, and the council is more than welcome to come to that. It starts at 6:30 and you meet back behind the city hall, and it's the same walk they had last year with Parks and Trails. Rona will be there to help Gail talk about things, and it's just the walk that comes up around here.
Thursday at 6.
Thursday at
6:30.
6:30, yeah. And then we go into Friday, which it kicks off 7 o'clock in the morning for yoga with yogurt, if anyone's interested. And the chalk art contest. And this year, our chalk art contest has exploded. We have 35 already signed up. It's doubled what we've ever had. I'm starting to get worried that we're not going to have enough places to do it. So I got to go over and with our person that's over that, Whitney, and see what we're going to do. But we're really excited on that. Saturday, and of course, the carnival will be back out again, starting at 4 and movie in the park. But Saturday.
So Friday we have a band, right?
Yes, Friday we
What
have
is
the
that?
band, the Beatles, and a couple other ones right before that. That will be fun.
When
Yeah.
did the band start? Do you know what time they start?
And the band starts on Friday at 4:30. Then 6 o'clock, and then 7:30 to 9 is the Beatles, and then the movie starts at 9 with Sing 2.
Okay.
So. And then we move, also on Friday is the Brighton Bank Bingo, so we hope you guys come on over, and I got the same person that called it last year to come back. That's my cat's son. He said he'd come back. Him and Shelly had so much fun last year. They said they'd do it again. So, excited to have them join us again.
Did a much better job second.
Except Shelly kept bumping the car and all the numbers would fall in and I couldn't remember which ones we called. But anyway, it was fun. And they said they'd love to come back and help me. Saturday morning, we go with Trader Joe's is sponsoring, they do the yoga with yogurt, and then they do the high fitness the next morning, and that's on the stage. We tried it last year. Success. It was so much fun that they wanted to do it again. So and the rec center actually supplies the people that oversee the yoga and the high fitness. So they do all that work for me. So wonderful that the partnership we have with the rec center. It's a great partnership. New this year, I just want to go we've been doing the car show, but I had a meeting with our sponsors and the car show person, Chuck, and we came up with new awards this year at the car show. We are doing, well, there's one new one, but we're kind of doing a little different. So we have Mayor's Choice. So Mayor, you always get to go, you get to pick a car, but this year we're doing 2 of each. So you get to pick 2 of your favorite cars. I just need it by 5. We also have Fire Chief Awards. So fire, if you're not there for whatever reason, have somebody go over and pick 2.
And that's on Saturday.
And that's on Saturday by 5
Okay.
o'clock. I need to know, and you'll just tell the DJ or Chuck over there who your choices are. And Chief, we have 2 for you to pick this year too.
Great, thank you.
We also have our sponsor Ken Mortuary is going to pick 2. And something we've never thought about of all the years I've been doing it is committee choice. I have never picked a car. And I'm like, I want to go pick a car myself. So we're going to do a committee choice with 2 people.
How many cars do we usually get?
Over 100 or so. Yeah. Yeah. And then we really talked to our DJ this year and asked him to really, we want to focus on the old antique cars and the classic cars. We asked him to go hit all those websites and really push. Those are the ones that we really want at this event. So we're hoping that that's what they do, is go after those. And then we have salamanders. When I first came on board here, 12 something years ago, 13 years, we had salamanders about 3 years in a row. The third year, we're like, well, we can't have salamanders again. So we gave them a new name and they still came in. Had a lady call, complain that it wasn't salamanders. I was like, well, it is. We just changed the name. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm going. Well, we decided it was time to bring them back. And so we are very excited that they are coming back. I've actually seen some of the other cities have had them, and I've watched some of their concerts on social media, and they're fantastic. So I'm very excited about Saturday night right before the fireworks.
What time do they start playing on Saturday?
Okay, they start at 8.
And is that when we'll have the
30.
council up on the stage?
Yes,
introducing
right
them?
before that at 8. Sorry, my mind's been working on others. Yeah, 8:30. So we asked council to be over at the stage by about 8:15.
Okay.
And then you go up and do kind of a thank you to all of our volunteers and welcome everybody.
Okay.
So. What I do want to talk about is our parade. I do need all of the council there at 10:30. If you need a ride up to the parade start, let me know and we'll work something out and get you up from the park here and get you up there. Due to the recent accident at a nearby city parade, the Butlerville Days Committee parade chair, which Aubrey is right here. She came to this listen. We've looked at guidelines of how to make our parade safer. And I just wanted to go over these really quick with you. I reached out to some Salt Lake County. I didn't want to reach out too far because the accident was still, and I didn't want it to accidentally go to them. So I reached out and just picked a few different cities to see what their parade rules were. And most of them came back and said, we really don't have much. This is what I had, and it's pretty much what we had. So I kind of racked my brain with Aubrey over here, and we kind of threw some things together, and we went back and forth why we would do something, why we wouldn't do something. So if you have a question, I can answer why we would do it a certain way, but this is what we felt would be good. I'm just going to read. I know that everybody received this. I'm just going to read the things that we're going to add this year that we didn't have prior. All walkers must maintain a 5-foot distance from any vehicle, float, or trailer. Walkers are just the ones that they're walking along and stuff. All parade entries with a vehicle and walkers must provide an adult walker safety person. So I'm going to call this person a safety person, but I wanted people to understand that it has to be an adult. It can't be a child. The walker is assigned to monitor the vehicle to ensure walker and spectator safety. I threw in spectator safety. I've been in enough parades with our float to know that sometimes that not just the people in the parade, you can still get somebody dart out in front of you. So they have to kind of keep the eye all the way around the flow. Okay. Thank you. And then number 8 is always been here, but we would like to try and enforce this a little bit more this year, is that we do not throw items off a trailer, a moving object. We don't throw the candy. If you want to throw candy, it must be walked. That way that the candy is pushed all the way out to where it needs to go, and you don't have a kid dodging in to get that candy. You may throw a candy, you may think it may bump back the next car coming forward. All of a sudden you've got and it's the car after the hit. So that's why we'd like to really push that this year. The adult walker is the only person who can retrieve more candy from a vehicle. The vehicle must come to a full stop. The adult walker will inform the driver when it's safe to proceed. The reason I put that in is that most of the time you'll get you'll get a big band or you'll get a big soccer team and they're throwing candy. Well, the candy is in the vehicle that is leading it because they don't have anywhere else to put it. So if the vehicle needs to stop, they pull the candy out. They said, okay, go ahead and go. And that's the reason I added that in there. No one under age 12 can stand on a moving vehicle, trailer, or float. I actually got that one from Days of 47. That is theirs. And so I thought that would be a good one for us too. Occupants of a float or vehicle are not allowed to get off or on the vehicle unless the float or vehicle is stopped. And the adult walker safety person coordinates the movement. That is the exact same as retrieving the cat meat, but we wanted to make that clear that they're not to jump off and on.
I wonder, I think that is perhaps the most important point. That's, I think we know what happened up in Kaysville. And I don't know if as every float starts the parade, that we can even re-emphasize, have somebody at the starting point saying, re-emphasizing, you do not get on and or off a float or a moving vehicle. And you know, and anyway, I don't know if we can maybe.
Yeah, that's something that Aubrey is the start of the parade, and that's something we've been talking about.
Okay.
Starter, I was even thinking having my volunteers after their stage, we have a waiting period that we show, and I could have the volunteers walk around and say, okay, here's again the guidelines. And
Yeah.
remind that this is what we're asking, here's what we want at the end, and here's what we asked during the break.
Yeah, and it would be kind of something like this where we're highlighting these ones that were, these are the changed ones, please reread it. You know, so
Well, there
yeah,
could be a couple, like, you know, the don't get it on and off. We put that on an A-frame facing the, as they take off.
Yeah, that's
and like the
actually
last
not a
thing
bad
they
idea.
see.
Yeah,
That's not a bad idea.
Because as much reminding as you do, someone's gonna forget, but if you've shown everybody leaving that
really big.
don't do
letters.
this, then you may get some
Do
other
not
people
get
saying
on
you
and
can't
off
be
the
doing that,
vehicle.
remember?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I think we can
I like
afford a couple of signs.
that's a great.
Obviously,
idea.
it's a sign that has to be very short. They have to be
I was gonna
careful
say-
to put on there.
If I could get it printed in time, but we may have to do it through it the old fashioned way and printing it here. So,
No printer.
But yeah, no,
Honestly,
I can come
even
up
if
with
it's on a
something.
Piece of
No.
paper for this time that you
Yeah,
can.
yeah, no, I can, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
that
Uh,
is short, but I think that's a great idea. You put some of those.
Well, even if we, you know, better yet, instead of doing it that way, we can hand a little piece of paper that says, do not, you know,
I
and
would
hand it straight to the driver
love
right
that.
before. I mean, me and Aubrey can work something out that would get that focus. And then all parade entries must have adequate adult supervisors for walking participants with no vehicle. If there is a vehicle, the above rule applies. Now, the reason for this one is we say, we just said adequate because I couldn't come up with 10 walkers for one adult. I don't need that with the high school marching band. But I do, you know, but when I've got the soccer team, I may need a few more than that. So we're kind of putting that back into the group that is coming. Plus, we don't have enough people to count. Okay, how many or do you have? How many? Some, these do have to go back to the parade participants to understand that we can't count everything. We can't follow this completely. And it's just to say is just to restate when they get there, the rules.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we have so far. If there's any others you wanted to add or thoughts or questions.
No, great.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is the theme? I heard that our float won an award, the mayor's award in the Sandy Parade. What is the theme of our Cottonwood Heights float that will be on?
Harvesting gratitude.
Oh, that's right. Harvesting.
There's
gratitude,
more
that's
to
right.
it, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I
Yes.
apologize. It's harvesting gratitude.
Well, and I remember the mayor bringing that up, so thank you. So that.
And we did win the mayor's choice.
Yeah,
there.
that, congratulations.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
that was
marvelous.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
thank you. Great.
Well, and we all appreciate you. So thank you for all of your hard work. This is an unbelievably huge undertaking. And so the fact that you know, it goes off almost without a hitch. Although, you know, if you could work on the weather, last year I was in the historical booth when that micro storm came through.
Yeah.
Well,
ruined
could
bingo
stop that.
And that used to be Councilman Anzac's responsibility, but
Yeah,
he's not done. it
he
in a few
controlled the
years.
weather.
Oh.
Okay.
He always said I was in charge of the weather, but.
May I clarify one thing?
Yes.
There's also a historic walking tour on Saturday.
Saturday morning
correct?
too. Yeah. So if you don't
Um,
do the Thursday one,
It's at 9:30, correct?
hold on, let me. It's 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Yeah, 9 a.m.
Yeah.
or 6:30 on Thursday. So Saturday morning, you can do that one too. And it's the same walk both times.
Great.
So,
Thank you, Ann.
Real quick shout out. I know many of us went, and saw Willy Wonka. Fantastic. I really liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
So
was marvelous.
Fran hasn't been very busy.
No,
And
she
Aubrey, is
gets
that
like
right?
January
Thank you.
off.
Thank you for all you, for everybody. All of the great people that we have in the city. It's
So-
amazing.
All right, so. Again, we haven't changed, so basically we're gonna have, you've got the. Banner and the. Guys, the flag.
Yeah,
color
so we
guard.
do the,
That's,
yes, we do the Butlerville Day banner. Then we do the color guard, and then we usually go with the mayor and then the float. And then police and then fire. So we always have had it in that order.
Okay.
It kind of states, this is Cottonwood Heights Parade, this is who we are, and you know, that kind of, it gives that feeling, and that's the way we've always done it.
Do we know the number of floats we've got yet?
She
That's
said
tomorrow.
50.
So.
And then the next day.
50, but probably more like 48.
So all together for entries, and then we should have it from all the cities on floats.
Oh, plus the city.
the mayor's job. Is if we've gone to a city and they don't show up to us to do a little mayor shaming.
Okay. I can do that.
That's not official, but just, you know.
I got Sean on my side. We can go do that. Okay.
So silly, so you guys are riding on the float, or you guys walking along the float?
Oh, I guess that depends on whether we want to throw candy.
Yeah, if you want to
Won't
throw
let us-
candy,
you
you'll
won't
have
let
to
us
walk.
do both
That's where my mind was going.
So
Yeah.
can we not throw candy?
from the float.
From
You
the
can
float.
if you walk by the side.
So their jawbreaker's that big, right?
Yeah.
Well,
You just nail it.
So the decision has to be made before the parade starts, whether you're gonna be on the float or walking, because you cannot go on and off the float.
Well, you
when it's in
can
progress.
if I stop the float. According to this, if I
we
make
should
them
probably
stop,
go decide what we're going to
you can
do
get off or you can get back on.
now.
If you wanna have
So if you
Does-
wanna
does
walk
that-
half
Does
of
that historically happen, Anne, where you sometimes do stop the float to let people get on or off,
No,
not having?
not ours.
Like
No,
this year.
no,
Not
I,
ours,
I,
not
us,
ours.
yeah, not yours, because we've been throwing the candy and stuff like that. But this year if you want to throw the candy, we will have you city council around to help throw too. But if you would like to throw it, then we'll stop it. You can get off and walk for a little while and throw the candy. And then if you're tired, we can put you back on. That's,
And so I understand that our immediate family can participate with us, or how does that work?
what we've done in the past is invited one of the family members, because I don't have enough room for all of the family members on the float. So I can get all the council with one extra person on the float.
So if, like, I was under the impression, well, yeah, there's been a little misunderstandings, but, so I have activated my, children and grandchildren who are all excited because they think they're gonna be, so can they, as long as they walk off, they cannot be on the float, but they could walk.
Yeah,
on the
I just
side
don't
of
have,
the-
yeah, I mean, that would be up to Tim, but I don't
Okay,
have enough
okay.
room. Yeah,
Okay,
I might be able to throw a few more on there. It just,
okay, I
once we
do
get there,
have,
then we have to sort it out who's sitting where.
okay, and I do have the cutest, sorry, Doug, but I have the cutest 6-month-old grandson who should be featured on the float. Okay, that was a joke. Nobody laughed.
I think he makes that 6-month-old walk.
That's
I-
good.
I-
Come on,
Well,
they're
on my
tough.
shoulders, on
Yeah.
Graham's
I was
shoulders.
gonna say second cutest, because I have. a couple of
Okay,
those.
you have a couple of.
Yeah.
Would you inclined to ride or walk?
It's only gonna be 100, so I'm not sure. I'm trying to decide.
We could have misters, we could be misting each other with.
Big super soaker.
And then who shows up with a super soaker?
Yeah.
I've walked it. It's all downhill.
It
It's not
is
too
nice
bad.
that it's downhill.
It's not too bad.
Okay,
Thank you, Ann.
I
Thank
would
you.
just, from my experience. My 8-year-old doesn't want to be in the parade because he wants to catch the candy. So
Okay.
that might compel me to walk.
Thank you.
So I can
Thank
take
you.
care of
Appreciate your
And
time.
then
Thank
I
you.
do have some shirts for you guys, and I should have them by the end of the week or early next week. For you to wear.
Oh,
So we'll be
Tired.
at least on Saturday morning.
So, great, thank you. We appreciate that a lot. So the next item is a city council policies discussion, and I'm actually just gonna have our city manager, Tim Tison, lead us on that for a second here.
Yeah, I'll be brief on this. When we met with the council in the council retreat, we talked about some changes to the policies. We agreed at that point that Shane and myself would work on some modifications and bring back to you to a work session for consideration. And then eventually, I believe that you'd need to pass a resolution on these. Today, we have the proposed modifications and they basically follow what direction you gave us in January as part of the retreat. Two of them, some of them are just minor grammatical changes, but two of the main changes and really the emphasis points are one, the computer equipment where we're requesting and requiring that you use city-owned equipment. So that's a big change in this, which we talked about at the retreat. The other change is related to receiving a car allowance to be able to travel to meetings rather than having to submit reimbursement requests for every time you travel. And so that's based on the conversation that we had through the budget discussion, and that's incorporated in here. Beyond that, those are the two major changes. Like I said, grammatical issues, and that's what we are proposing. So if you're comfortable with this and want us to move this forward, we'll formalize this in a resolution at the council meeting. And if there's any additional changes that you'd like, we can definitely talk about that as well. That's my report.
Great. Any questions?
Well, I reviewed it thoroughly and I was pleased with the revisions.
Great, great. One of the things that I wanted to push was that you don't have to submit your reimbursement. We know that you drive and go to the many things with your assignments. And so that'll be nice if you get that reimbursement without having to submit a mileage. So. Okay, the next item is our sensitive lands evaluation and development standards. Now we have an acronym for that called SLEDs. We all know that. So, but if anybody, for anybody listening, Mike Hansen, that doesn't know that, that is called SLEDs. So that's how we will refer it to. And I'm going to turn some time over to our Community and Economic Development Director, Mike Johnson, to lead us.
Thank you, Mayor. The last work session, we went through kind of what the existing ordinance does, kind of the purpose of it. Today, I'm going to go over a very general overview of the major changes that are working their way still through Planning Commission. I want to emphasize we don't have a recommendation yet from Planning Commission. They're going to reconsider again at their August meeting, and they will at some point vote and make a recommendation to the city council, at which point the council will take it up and we'll dive into all the details of it at that point. So this is an overview with limited time tonight. I just wanted to kind of hit some of the bigger changes, but know that there's a whole set of technical changes, a whole draft ordinance that's available on the city website that we've been working through with the Planning Commission. Here's just some background. This kind of started, we introduced this in May of 2021 as an idea, and then really hit it hard with the Planning Commission beginning in January. We've had 6 Planning Commission meetings where we've talked about this now, and we're still working on it. This has been advertised in the city newsletter, so this has been out there. We're trying to get as much input on this as we can. Here's an overview of the major changes, and I want to caveat again, this is not all the changes. This is a high level overview. If I'm missing something in here, it's by no means intentional, and all of the technical details are available publicly for review. The biggest change probably is the updated hazard maps. Each hazard regulated by SLEDs has a corresponding area of the city where those hazards are more prone to happen. And when we combine all those hazards into one map layer, that creates an overlay zone. And the next slide will show you the previous overlay zone and the one that's being proposed now. In addition to updated maps, there are being made technical updates and clarifying language as recommended by the city's geology consultant, that's Geostrata, who we've spoken with before and you'll hear from again during this process, as well as the UGS, the Utah Geological Survey. We've also, pertaining to fault lines, gotten input from professors at multiple universities and other subject matter experts as well. We've updated and mainly clarified some of our regulations for steep slope areas. Slope stability is one of our hazards that we regulate. We've added new riparian corridor and watershed protection standards. They have always been in the ordinance as a reference. And they say for riparian standards, go to chapter 17 point something. And when you go there, it doesn't exist. So there's always been an intention to have these standards in the ordinance and they've never been there. We have drafted those now and I'll go over a few slides that kind of give you a highlight of what those are intended to do. And then in all of this, the overall guiding direction is for these amendments to kind of take into account the most updated industry standards and data we have out there on all of these hazards and how to regulate and engineer for them and mitigate them. By and large, all the proposed amendments are intended to make the code both clearer, but also stricter. Again, based on current best practices and provide up-to-date safety standards and professional oversight to all levels of development or construction projects in sensitive areas of the city. This is a highlight of the existing SLEDS overlay map, and then the new one. You can see the new one on the right there is just really an enhanced version of the existing one, and that is again based on new information that's published or that's out there pertaining to various different hazards. These are not all the same hazard, and different regulations will apply depending on where you are in the city. Largely, if you're down in this kind of southern and southwestern portion of the city, you're going to be dealing with, some floodplain issues and groundwater and hazards associated with being in proximity to waterways. Whereas if you're up on the east bench, you're probably dealing more with fault lines and steep slopes and rock fall and some of those mountain-related hazards. But the ordinance again regulates all of those.
Mike, I have a question.
Sure.
That little protrusion down there, why was that left off and then added?
Wait,
On the left?
this here?
No, on the left, that little spur.
This
Keep
here?
Going left. Right, keep going, keep going. keep
Oh,
going.
this. So you can see here, this overlay map existed before the, I think, 2012 annexation of land into the city.
So that's an annexation.
That was new property, and then Granite Oaks here. This is all very sensitive down here. It's at the foothill of the mountain.
I see.
But that was not previously part of the city.
That's the reason.
And now it is. So
Left
we've
off.
just expanded that.
Gotcha.
And this area here is not part of the city. It's not to say there's not hazards there, but we don't need to show them on city hazard maps because it's not part of our jurisdiction.
Is there a way to alter the code so that it automatically gets added to or not, depending on where the annexation occurs to the overlay zone?
We can update the maps. It would just be through an ordinance amendment. That being said, there is language in the current ordinance that will say that if there's say you're just outside the hazard zone, but we know there's a fault line or something, these regulations can still apply, and we've done that.
You call that probable cause.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, in a certain way, yeah. If we know there's evidence of hazards, the sensitive lands standards will apply. And we've done that in Granite Oaks is a great example. There's been development in there. We've applied these standards to this.
One other question, Mike.
Yeah.
Those protrusions coming out, the one on the right looks like a grill a little bit, the mouth of the grill.
This here?
Yeah, what is that? And we've got it on the left too.
This is Mill Hollow. There's a steep Mill Hollow Park.
A
There's
real
a steep hillside around
I
it.
see, okay.
This one is I believe it's old Wasatch Road. It's the access road, kind of up behind Canyon Center.
I see.
There's that huge
I
grade
got you,
change there.
got you. Up on Ferguson, well. I used to
Yeah,
call
on the
it-
way up.
Yeah, so these are generally those kind of steep hillside
I see,
areas.
I see.
that
If we
protrude
saw
out.
a topo, we'd see it.
Yep.
So I thought Scott actually brought up a good point. So if do we have something in the annexation process that says, hey, we look at the same time at if any of that annexation is in hazard or could be, because it's not in the city, if we
Sure.
annex it in, is that actually the process to look and make sure it's not in a SLEDS overlay zone?
I think if it happened today, that should be part of the staff analysis of any annexation. And if there's a need to apply these standards, make sure that overlays there, I think that could definitely happen. I can't speak for why it didn't happen in 2012 or 2011, but I think that would be part of our process today is to look. That's
Is it-
part of the analysis.
Okay.
I don't know if we,
Do we need to add it to the annexation code that we have?
Well, the annexation code is state law.
yes.
Okay,
So I don't know that there's anything in state law that requires or even allows that sort of analysis. Certainly when the property comes in. When the property comes into the city, why then,
We have to set zoning on
we
it.
have to start zoning on it, and
Part of that
part of that
Oh,
would be
okay.
that
Okay.
sort of analysis.
That would work.
It just looks like we may have missed that in the past, so. let's
Yeah.
have that step.
There's been clarifications. There's a lot of references in the ordinance to the city and to staff and to various positions and to the DRC. We've cleaned all that up in the definition section that basically says, for the purposes of this chapter, which is sensitive lands, and unless otherwise specified, all decisions, approvals, and recommendations by the city, however it's referenced, shall be made by the DRC. Decisions will come from the DRC, and we have left in and just cleaned up and made it a little clear that the DRC consists of members of city staff approved by the city council by resolution once per year. So the council won't appoint specific individuals, but positions, and set the makeup of the DRC once annually. That DRC will then be the primary staff committee charged with making decisions, reviews, corrections.
At what
updates.
point of the year does that get triggered?
That would be up to the council.
But the definition of the makeup of the DRC that's not been altered.
That's the same, correct.
What he's saying is that we actually can determine yearly if we want to make changes to who's on the DRC.
So, yeah, the definition is, I think, I don't know exactly, the staff from various departments and then others as needed, and that's where the council can adopt that by resolution, make sure others as needed is incorporated in there.
Great.
Now I think I'm just going to go through a few of again, a high level summary, and we can get into the why and the rationale behind this probably at a different time, I would suggest, because all of these could take 30 minutes on their own. And again, the planning commission is not done considering this yet, so this is all subject to, change and updates before you get this. But one area where we're proposing some cleanup language and clarification is pertaining to steep slope hazards. So we have revised the slope development standards to state that no development, including grading, retaining walls, and structures, is permitted on slope areas in excess of 30%. That 30% limitation exists today. It does not clarify things like retaining walls, and we've had that come up, and we're saying here, if it's a 30% natural slope and it's retaining wall structure or other development, it's just not allowed. We're protecting those large natural slopes. There is an exception built in for isolated slopes smaller than 2 acres in size. The best example of that was talked about at Planning Commission is you have the streets, particularly behind City Hall here, where the whole street is on a big slope. That's a lot of different lots, but that's one slope. And the intent here is not to say no development on any of those lots that are existing. There is also, it's not on this slide, but there is, it's clearly detailed in the ordinance that exception does not apply east of Wasatch Boulevard. The big intent here is we preserve that natural hillside of the foothills of the mountains. So any natural slope in excess of 30% east of Wasatch Boulevard is undevelopable, which again is consistent with today's ordinance.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
If a lot of these homes up in the Dover area, obviously around fault lines,
Mhm.
if they were ever, say, tear downs or whatever else like that, would they be subject to the same things we're looking at here?
Yes.
Now?
Yeah, they would. The sensitive lands ordinance would apply. I do recall, I don't know if it was in the immediate vicinity of the church property, but in the neighborhood, someone a year or two ago did a residential addition, and they had to do the fault trenching and the study and all of that to clear the addition of any
So
hazard.
it's not just a scrape and rebuild, it's a substantial.
It's really any change to the footprint. You can remodel within what's already existing, but if you go and add and expand.
Putting
a garage or
foundation, anything.
anything habitable has to go through the sensitive lands process.
So Mike, when I had the meeting with Tim Thompson from Strata about sloping,
Mhm.
one of the things that he mentioned is the UGS is the only place in the world that the 30% slope exists.
Mhm.
He said, that actually came about because of a study in 1999 that they determined all of these slides happened on slopes that were greater than 30%.
Mhm.
In 2016, they did another study and realized, well, also consistent with those slides over 30% slope was the earth. And so those slides aren't happening depending upon if they're built on, the surface of the earth is actually as important as the slope.
Yeah.
And so that Tim mentioned that he thought that we would actually have an exception based on soil content and earth. Instead of we wanted to keep the 30% in there, but there would be an exception for that. Is that the case?
There's no exception for soil type. It's just 30%.
So we're
For
not gonna
whatever
make that
reason
change.
has become kind of the industry standard. And a part of the ordinance is to preserve those natural foothill areas, and that intent is still
Okay.
realized in here. So no exceptions like that have been carved out at all. There's no, for large natural 30% slopes, there's no way in the existing ordinance and the proposed one to develop in those areas.
So the intent wasn't just landslides or
Yeah.
avalanches or something, it was
A
also
big part of it is preservation of.
preservation. of
Preservation.
the-
No, that makes sense.
So liquefaction, Bountiful changed a lot of things, and I think every time you have a great event, big event, then it might change some of what they've got, right?
Yeah, certainly every time a study is done, every time fault lines are trenched, that data is reported to UGS and becomes part of their database. So every time there's a development anywhere along a fault line, that enhances the data we have, which again is the reason you see these maps, kind of beefed up over time. Pertaining to fault lines, there's been a lot of technical changes, but maybe the biggest one is there was a place in the ordinance before where it said the minimum fault setback for a residential build from the fault line is 15 feet. And then another place that said 20, cleaned all that up. The minimum setback's 20 feet. Even some industry standards said 15 feet's probably okay, but where our ordinance said 20 already, keeping it 20 is
You're on the side of caution.
yeah, and it's not a bad thing and it's justified and we were supported in that. So we kept that at 20. Made that clear. Now the riparian protection area, like I said, this is brand new. This is going to apply to your large waterways, primarily Big and Little Cottonwood Creek. This is a very technical ordinance as well, so I'll do my best to go over it at a high level here. But basically what it does, the goals here you can see are to protect these natural waterway areas, to guide development in ways that enhance those areas, to improve water quality, minimize flood hazards, and then protect the value associated with those riparian corridors. This is essentially an illustration of what this ordinance tries to accomplish, and it establishes, say, zones or areas based on distance away from the top of the bank of a waterway. And it limits what you can do in those areas. So you can see the closer you are to the top of the bank, the more restrictive the ordinance is in allowing development. So that within 25 feet of the top of the bank, there's no structures allowed. From 25 to 50 feet, there's limited structures allowed. So accessory buildings, non-habitable buildings where you have less of an impact on the built environment. It's not inhabited. It's usually not larger structures. You actually have a maximum footprint of 200 square feet. So, maybe a shed or a little outbuilding. And then as you go from there, we get into allowing primary structures as you increase your distance away from the waterway. There's been a lot of public input on this and a lot of support for this ordinance. We've seen a lot of it from the Old Mill Estates neighborhood. Those meetings are well attended, and they are all, they'll get up and share their support. There's been a push actually to make these standards stricter, and that's still, that's up to the planning commission to decide. But so far, the feedback on the riparian protection ordinance has been positive. But that's where that is right now. So
So I'm curious, so I'm building a house right around that 120. That means I can have 2,000 square feet sticking over the 100-foot line.
yes,
And build more at 101 feet.
correct.
So that's just how much can encroach into that.
Into that
Does not
area.
mean your whole house is 2,000
No.
square.
No,
Because again, I'm thinking certain Little Cottonwood Creek Valley, there's certainly homes that are a lot bigger than that.
a lot
I don't know
of,
how
yes,
close they are.
absolutely. And a lot of this was calibrated looking at what the housing stock we have along these waterways to make sure we're not, we're finding the balance between preservation and allowing them to have what they have and, make sure there's room for remodels and additions and upgrades and things like that. Okay, so that's all I have. I do want to clarify, there were some questions about the process, the development process or the review process when a sensitive lands application comes in. That hasn't changed. We renamed the chapter and it moved down a little bit in the final ordinance, which is again still being finalized, but all those standards are still there. So the process for DRC review and scoping meetings and studies and reviewing those is unchanged. It's still in there. I know there was a question on that, so. Any preliminary questions at this point? Like I said, we will get into very technical discussion as you get a formal.
The DRC's gone over these changes and stuff, and that's what they're presenting to the planning commission.
Correct.
And that's what they're taking the next stab at it.
Yes, yep.
So we have a couple great citizens that have become subject matter experts on sleds, and I've met with them multiple times. And one of the things that they told me in our discussions, we've talked about, what are other cities doing? Are they doing anything better or different? And so one of these people went and studied all of the other cities and their ordinances. And they say Cottonwood Heights is far and beyond above where everybody else is. This ordinance that we have, nobody else compares to what we're doing, which I think is awesome. So thank you for your work. I know during this process of making changes that makes people nervous, but I think, I feel pretty good that if anything, we're going the other way and making things
More strict.
more strict than less strict. So I appreciate that.
Don't want to be as one of those cities that gets in the news because we permitted something on a hillside that then slides down into the neighbors. Or something like that. I mean, those are horrible. Unfortunately, we have some risk there because of previous, we have some older stock. But I think certainly going forward, we want to make sure that we keep things as safe and as reasonable as we possibly can.
Well, I have also had meetings with various geologists and seismologists, and the thing that I think we need to be so aware of as a council is the extreme danger level of part of Cottonwood Heights being in a fault zone that is ripe for a major earthquake. And so I'm glad that not only Cottonwood Heights, but Salt Lake County is doing a lot of retrofitting of things. We know that the Salt Lake City Water District is putting in a redundancy pipeline based on their concerns that the 100-year-old pipes or 70-year-old pipes that we currently have would not withstand major earthquakes. So this is all really very timely, and I also commend the planning department for taking this to the level that you have, and that we continue to realize that we're fortunate to live right here next to the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon, Little Cottonwood, but it also is part of a real major fault zone, the Wasatch Fault Zone, and needs to be really taken extremely seriously.
Thank you, Councilor.
Bring up one point, and then I'll be done. The minimum fault setback, that is for residential, single family, but we have a whole table in the ordinance for commercial uses or high occupancy uses. That fault setback increases. So it's not 20 feet for everything. That's the minimum.
So one of the things I'd like about that is that it's more restrictive than the UGS guidelines.
So in one of those lots that has a house that actually they find out is on a fault, what's the recourse? They do an issue and they say, well, you just can't build the extra house because you've got a fault underneath your house.
Generally, yeah, that would become a
Kind of
a legal non-conforming structure. We've allowed interior remodels, but expansions, they would have to be clear of fault hazards for that.
But they would, I guess, then it becomes the awareness of the owners on their part. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Don't go far because the next item is the Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan, and we're still going to have Mike lead this discussion as well.
Thank you again. Now, we talked about this a number of months ago in a work session with the Planning Commission. We had just gotten a recommendation from the Planning Commission of approval. I think that was in January, I want to say. But this is a regional plan that was funded by Wasatch Front Regional Council grant a transportation land use connection grant. The participating cities were Cottonwood Heights, Midvale, Taylorsville, Murray, Holiday, and Mill Creek. And the goal of this was for each of these 6 cities to have a active transportation master plan at the end of it, but done in a way where it establishes what they call backbone active transportation routes that connect each city to each other and establish, more semi-regional active transportation network. So when you're on your bike, city boundaries are good for a lot of things, but on your bike, you just want to be able to get to where you want to go safely, and city boundaries don't necessarily matter. So that was the scope of the project. Let's see, the vision and the goals of this plan are to prioritize safe routes for all users, complete, like I said, a connected backbone network that crosses city boundaries and is consistent throughout. Collaborate for public and multi-city commitment, and then improve access to key origins and destination centers. This has been going on since 2019, and at this point, the work on the draft is done, and then drafts have been handed to each of these 6 cities for consideration and for approval. And there it is. Yeah, our planning commission recommended approval on January 5th. This is just some background showing the different levels of protection of various active transportation infrastructure. We've got level 3, which is generally just shared roadways or the bike lanes painted on the road, which are known as sharrows sometimes. Level 2 protection is maybe a separated bike lane, but not physically separated, but separated by paint or striping, but still in the roadway. And then you've got your level 1 protection, which is physically separated somehow from the roadway. And there are different ways to do that. So
I guess the short answer on those 3 levels was level 3 is everybody's all together. Level 2, there's paint between them, and level 3, there's cement or
there's a curb or cement, or it could be a shared use path. The initial version of this that the city got was a lot more sparse than it is now. What we've done is take all of our master plans, including the 2015 bike and trails master plan and the recent parks, trails, and open space master plan, and Bonneville Shoreline Trail access master plan and things like that. Anything that had a trail on it that was in the roadway like this, we've made sure those trails are incorporated on this regional planning document. So what you see here is the Cottonwood Heights portion of this plan includes a pretty built out network.
This is the
this is updated. Yeah, this had a lot of holes in it before, so we've been at work making sure everything we want is in this. But you can see here the different proposed projects. The orange there, which is the predominant color, is actually multi-use path, which would be a physically separated bike lane.
That's what I was going to say. This has got to be the end goal.
This is the end goal. Yeah, the master plan is years and years and years out. Yep, absolutely.
And multi-use path infers then a level 3.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was.
And so these are.
Yeah.
And none of these are. I mean, I'm aware of 2 grants that are very small sectional pieces. So, as I see it, the challenge with our active transportation is that we need to prioritize. Basically, we don't have any consistent, complete bicycle lanes in our city. And I know you have a map that shows what is existing, but for those of us that ride our bikes for transportation, we can attest that there is not consistent bike lanes, whether you're on Bengal or Wasatch or any of these streets. So, yeah, I mean, we have still a lot of work ahead of us to make our city systematically safe for pedestrians and cyclists.
Yeah, absolutely. This planning level document, it sets a vision, and then, the council prioritizes implementation, and we look to, this can help us when areas redevelop in working to get these improvements as part of redevelopment, but then, the council can proactively approach these as well. But, the planning document is the foundation for it all. And the hope is that all of the 6 cities in the region will adopt this as well. And then we have this, this kind of regional network and vision that, we get to work on over time.
One thing I hadn't known, Mike, is the apartments that were built on Fort Union. And 17th East, I think it is, we actually required a separate bike lane to be built. And we actually have funds from a corridor preservation grant to purchase property to continue that separate bike lane down Fort Union Boulevard. So I didn't know that that was actually in the process.
And that would go westbound from the apartments. They would go west
Continued west.
toward our
The
big box
fire
store
department
area.
is
On that side of the road.
Yeah.
Well, it goes from 1700 east to Brook Hill.
And
So-
Brook Hill is what?
Brook Hill's to the east of that, actually. Yeah.
Oh, it is to the east.
Yeah,
I
so
thought
it's-
it,
I can show you. It-
Oh, yeah, it is east. It's east.
It's generally from, you know, where the hand is here down to, you know, maybe right here. It's not a big stretch, but it's a start.
start.
And the development there for both of those
$100 million
developments
grant, it's something.
and development requirements for both of those developments, we required that dedication and construction as part of those projects. So they're building it. We're trying to fill in the gap created by those two. There will still be, you know, bookends to it that then we can keep working on.
We
But there's
certainly
other-
need something there.
Well, and as other development occurs, that becomes the same request and.
So I sit on the Public Works Corridor Preservation Committee. And so, and they have, that we actually talked about that we have a couple $100,000 already, you know, sitting with us, or that's approved for us to continue to purchase right away so that we can continue building these bike paths. So it's a good thing.
I have to give a lot of credit to our staff.
Yeah.
For applying for those and
I think it's all the
Public
mayor's
Works
fault.
and Community Economic Development. And then the mayor can do his thing by being on that
And
committee.
then I'm not gonna recuse myself. I'm gonna go, yep, approved.
I want to ask a question.
Sure.
How many of these grants are out there and available in the near future? I know that infrastructure is something that is emphasis federally. How many of those grants are we investigating or that are coming up that you can see? I know you can't really see the future, but.
Of course.
But I know usually they backstack these grants and the word gets out that they're coming out.
Sure. Yeah, the big ones we utilize, there's a lot for road projects and things like that. They're actually catching up with these active transportation type grants, but the Wasatch Front Regional Council is the source of a lot of grants. They administer multiple types of grants, whether they're state or county or federal. They all kind of come through Wasatch Front Regional Council. And then UDOT actually has grants as well. And this is a good example. The grants we got to acquire land and then build this network that we're working on, the acquisition money came from the county. And then the actual construction money came from UDOT. So we're leveraging two different grants to complete the project. And then working on some of this federal infrastructure money. That again is all being routed through Wasatch Front Regional Council, and they're starting to formalize that, and we're part of that working group as well. So we're keeping our eye on all these sources. as much
What's
as-
our match on the corridor preservation?
The match we used here was the construction projects.
Yes, what is the, I know we've done that, but what's the amount if you?
Corridor
I don't know
preservation
off
does
the top of my
not require matching
At all?
funds. You get graded higher
If you have.
if you have
Okay,
matching funds,
got
but
it.
you
All
do
right,
not
all right.
have to have matching funds.
But just to emphasize with your question, we have been in that working group on those federal dollars, especially for these projects. I was talking to Matt and Adam about that and how they're coordinating that effort. And we're involved, and then we'll apply where we can for the things that are applicable to us. So
I see that in the broadband too. There's some dollars that are getting ready to hit the state. That we've been discussing in some of those broadband meetings, and it's going through DOT. And of course, they'll disseminate the funds from there, but it was interesting to me to find out how many hands are touching these grants before they actually get down to the municipalities, which is something we're gonna have to change.
Yeah.
This is an adjacent comment, and I'm hoping I'm not stepping on Ellen's toes. If she talked about neighborhood byway. Alternative routes that people might not initially think. I mean, when you drive somewhere, if you're going downtown, the last thing you're doing is taking side roads.
The scenic route.
You're gonna hop on an arterial or a freeway or something and you're gonna get down there. One of the things bicyclists or pedestrians first time I actually did a pedestrian walk from my house to my parents over in Holiday, I was like, oh yeah, I know that road exists, but I would never think to use it. Maybe, again, it's just along this line of maybe setting up some of those areas and even some signage in the city that says, you know, this is a better way. If you're coming down from east of the high school and you're riding through the high school, taking Nantucket around to the back is actually a lot better way to go on a bike. And it's actually probably a little shorter. If we sign some of those things so that people aren't always just say on Bengal or Park Ridge or.
Well, and in, you know, I don't know if we have time permits to get into too great a detail, but I want to thank Councilman Bracken for bringing up something that could be done right away. It wouldn't cost a lot of money, and that is identifying more of these neighborhood bypass routes. I mean, there's a few of them that have been identified, but in addition to really thinking about how somebody cycles to go either north or west. I mean, obviously I live on the east edge of Cottonwood Heights, so I'm always thinking either I'm going north and eventually west, or I'm going west, or I'm going south and to the west. If I'm, especially if I'm going outside of Cottonwood Heights. And these neighborhood bypass routes are an excellent way, until we can get the kind of funding and grants to do the major collectors and arterials and make them safe. Steering our pedestrians and cyclists onto these neighborhood bypass routes is such an excellent idea. And they're called wayfinding signs. Salt Lake City proper is doing a lot of this kind of work. You start noticing those wayfinding signs, and I think that would be a tremendous thing that Cottonwood Heights could do immediately in the next few years. And while we work on these bigger picture and things like Fort Union and all these monster projects, the bypass routes could be something that would not cost the city a lot of money, and we could really not. And also, in talking to our public works director, Matt Shipp, we talked about share rows, and that's the idea of places like Danish Road and others that are windy. We can, if we keep them slow and windy, we can make them share rows. And I think for most cyclists, as long as they know the cars are going slow, you know, they're willing to ride in those places. But it's when the speeds are up over 25 miles an hour, you have to start getting worrisome about both the cars not seeing the pedestrians and cyclists, and the propensity for severe injury and death.
Yeah, it's not this exactly, but it's kind of connected because that's the local version of
Yeah,
the Mid Valley.
no, fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it, both of you. Anything else, Mike?
So based on council feedback, I mean, we are ready to take this for public comment and start moving it forward. You have the plan material so you can look at it, but again, it matches. As much as we've been able to, it matches our various master plans that establish a vision for this trails network throughout the city.
Well, and respectfully, I would like to see, before it goes to the public, a map that identifies the various main places within the city that include the schools, the grocery stores, the library. You know, a map like that for 90% of the public is, I mean, you just kind of look at it and go, oh, I see numbers and lines.
Mhm.
But I would really like to work with the staff and support your efforts on coming out with something that is large, that we have an open, you know, that people could really come together and see a vision for the city that the average person can relate to. And that's a task that will take a little bit. But I would like to see us do that before we would take something like this to the public comment, because I don't think that this is adequate, in my opinion.
You're talking about just adding another layer of
I'm-
public spots.
Well, I'm working on an example. I'll bring it and show you.
Yeah, because I'd like that clarification. We can definitely probably look at important points like schools and other things, but we need to clarify that. It can also, as we take this out to the public, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, I mean, we can do the aerial element of it as well and highlight some points, so it's a little bit more visible and understandable based on aerials and things such as that.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. Please don't think that I'm acting like, wow, there's just, you know, the snap of a finger. I mean, you know, there's a lot to consider, and I'd really like to talk more, you know, and interact more with the staff related to the idea of you know, what is active transportation? Again, it's not just cycling, it's a walking and cycling to get places. And really looking at where the easements can be, how we can get north across the I-215 barrier. Thankfully, in the last council group, and thank you to Councilman Bracken for coming up with the wonderful bicycling path, multi-use path that goes from Mount Big Cotton Canyon up into Holiday. But once you get to Holiday, if you're riding on to visit relatives or to go anywhere from there, it gets sketchy unless you're going due north on Marie Holiday Road. Anyways, there's a great level of opportunity here that I'd like to see, again, work with the staff and come up with something that is also give some level of prioritization to again, in my opinion, starting with neighborhood bypass routes and then working on these grandiose things such as these multi-use protected paths off of Creek Road and all the other collectors and arterials. I mean, we're talking that's whatever it is, 20 years away probably.
Thank you, Councilmember Brill. I know you could go multiple more hours talking about this, but we're not gonna let you, but
Yeah.
thank you. That's really important and I appreciate your input. Okay, the next item is just a review of calendars and upcoming events. So just a reminder that Cottonwood, our city hall will be closed in observation of Pioneer Day. That's this coming Monday. Cottonwood Heights Butlerville days that we've talked about, July 28th to the 30th. Anybody listening that still wants to be a volunteer and sponsor, you can contact Ann Netchell. Movie in the Park, Sing 2 will be on July 29th during Butlerville days at Butler Park, starting at 9 p.m. City council meetings on August 2nd at City Hall here, starting at 4. And future city council meetings will be held September 6th and 20th, October 4th and 18th, November 1st and 15th, and December 6th and 20th. Christmas is around the corner.
Don't say that.
That's scary.
Okay, well, with that, I will, we do not have anything to discuss in a closed meeting today, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn our work session and begin our work business meeting at 6:30.
I will motion that we end our work session here. It's now.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? We got a half an hour. That's a little.
Yeah,
That's
hey.
crazy.
Good job,
What a
guys.
luxury.
Good job.
Oh, wow. I heard you.
Kind of surprised.